October 1994 sees the start of a new era for Monifieth High. For the first time in the school's 18-year history, a new rector will walk through these doors to take over the legacy left by the school's only previous rector, Hector Lowe.
In this video, we'll be taking a look back over the past 18 years, recalling the early days as well as the people and events that have contributed to the school's success.
Ironically, the story doesn't even begin in Monifieth, but at a former boys-only school in Dundee.
Previously, children from Monifieth had to travel to Carnoustie High School to receive their secondary education. However, the growth in the secondary school role in the 60s and 70s meant that Carnoustie High could no longer cope with the intake of pupils from both Carnoustie and Monifieth. Following the reorganisation of local government in 1976, it was decided to build a new secondary school in Monifieth, and work on the current site was started.
In August 1976, Monifieth High School began its life here in the former Stobswell Boys' School with 12 staff and fewer than 150 pupils who had to be transported from Monifieth daily by bus.
Well, Hector, this is where it all started. Slightly different from our days. It's now nicely carpeted instead of the old concrete floor. You remember the Janny's Bucky where old Fiery Fred held sway? That was in there. Still there, also a new janitor. And he was accompanied by Dennis. You remember many of his exploits.
I think I can just give it my birthday or you can come in on Monday.
This is the corridor, remember, where Dennis managed to collapse rather frequently. And perhaps you remember the famous occasion when Annie Gong found him, stepped over him, and left him to come back to his senses. Good old Annie. Her tuck shop was just along the other end of the corridor, and if I remember right, she used to sell her produce from one of the windows here out to the back playground, which is still the same. Hasn't changed in any way, although you'll notice that it's had a paint job since we've been here, and it's also been nicely carpeted. Yeah, these were the famous tuck shop areas in this apartment. You'll notice it's all been bricked up now, which makes quite a change. But if we come up here, these were the old toilets, the famous OK Corral. When we looked forward to a winter break when they got in the freezing stage and we couldn't use them. You remember the old days we used to hand out the sheets of toilet paper and they used to hang on the back of the single doors. These were all open in these days, a bit primitive. They're now all sealed inside and nice and comfortable, presumably. Quite a change from the time when we were here. We're now in the old hall of the Stobswell School. You remember how this doubled for us as a sort of dining room for the Peace Eaters, and also provided us with a gym and a stage for our early concerts. You can remember perhaps looking at the stage there how we struggled with the grand piano and managed to raise it from floor level to stage level thanks to the assistance of Joe and some of the healthier, more active types that we had at that time in first and second year. The same old playground in which we used to run the first of our very early sports competitions when Joe Andrew was head of the PE department. You see many changes in the background. Remember the old flats with which we used to have trouble across the road with some rather undesirable characters who stayed there, all gone, replaced by nice new housing. Changes also in this area which was just grass. This has now become part of the horticultural department of the college. But that was just grass in these days when we came here, and the pupils used to sun themselves in the best of our summer weather. You remember how we used to have fairly frequent visitations from our neighbours across in the Morgan. There was one famous occasion when we actually chased them across this playground, had them cornered and were sure we wanted a good thing down in this corner here. And they actually burrowed their way underneath that fence there to make their escape across the wall. Well, these are the old dining rooms that we used to use when we were at Stobbswell. They're obviously in even worse condition now than they were when we used them. It looks, in fact, as if they're no longer in use. But you can remember many escapades up here, I'm sure, when we used to share the dining room with the Clipping Primary School. And its famous headmaster who used to come in with his gloves and clap the children in, and they all sat peacefully and quietly, and we lived in a very friendly, neighbourly fashion. You'll also remember how we used to collect scraps for Annie for her lunch, because she wasn't allowed to dine up here with us for some reason or other. And I haven't yet fathomed out how the mighty Hector Lowe's Pam managed to squeeze 2 pies into a small tupper box, or even how Annie managed to squeeze the 2 pies wherever they went when she ate them. But these were the days, yeah? Changed days now, I'm afraid.
With a new intake of first-year pupils every year, Monifieth High had outgrown the accommodation at Stobbswell by June 1979, and from August of that year, pupils were accommodated in the current building in Monifieth.
3 members of the original teaching staff are still working at Monifieth High School and can well remember the origins of the school in Stobbswell.
I think the most interesting memory perhaps is the patch in the middle of Dundee with a school in it and a sign up saying Monifieth High School.
The thing that stands out most to me is that we were so few in number at first, 130 pupils and about 15 staff, and it felt in the building we were in Stobbswell that we were like peas in a pod rattling around. That was the phrase that often got used. It was strange in the fact that we were only all first year pupils plus staff, so it took a bit of getting used to.
When first going to the building, it was a bit imposing. Found it quite dark, quite cold, and the 2 rooms that I was allocated, we were quite lucky. They were fully equipped from new because the old Stobbswell Boys' School had no home economics department, so we had 1 kitchen and 1 needlework room fitted out.
The transportation of pupils from Monifieth was not without its difficulties, especially in winter.
It wasn't so much the problems of the transporting, but the fact that they had to be transported that gave rise to 1 or 2 things. For example, we had very short lunch times. Lunch hour was actually only 40 minutes for most of the time we were there. Part of the reason was, of course, we had a captive audience. They had nowhere to go. They couldn't go home. We didn't encourage them to go out because, in fact, there were gangs of Nasty Morgan pupils lurking around. So we, in fact, arranged the lunch hour so that there was the least possible contact with pupils from Morgan Academy. So in that sense, that was a problem arising from the fact that there were buses. But apart from that, I don't recall any great problems, except perhaps in winter time. You know, because we all had to travel there, and it meant that, you know, there were occasionally delays when, you know, the whole school was late.
In the winter, when it snowed really quite heavily, the snow coming in off the east, and I was travelling from Blairgowrie at the time. I set off in the morning, no snow, came over Tullybacket into Dundee, and it was feet deep. On arriving at the school, there was no one else there, and the buses turned up very late that day just to be sent home. In fact, I'm not sure all the buses got in.
The extreme cold brought with it many other problems in such an old building.
Very early on, Mr. Lowe lent us a 1-bar electric fire that we spent most of our days huddled round.
The toilets, for example, that froze up in the winter, the outside toilets for the pupils, the famous stories of Mr. Lowe and Mr. Martin standing rationing out the toilet paper for the pupils, especially when they had to go up to the primary school toilets because our own ones were frozen up.
With so few staff and pupils in the early days, there was also a very strong family atmosphere, with everyone sticking together to overcome those initial difficulties.
was quite a close community. Although there were 3 staff rooms, we all knew each other fairly well and worked together rather well, because being 12 in number, the first year in particular, we had to draw on other talents of other staff to make sure that the school ran like a normal 6th year secondary would. Most of us were involved in tuck shop duties. We were all involved in lines, which was really quite difficult to do some days. You'd go out, the staff room went out onto a higher area. There was a banking down to a low area where the children lined up, and you would go out and blow the whistle and nothing would happen until you realised there was a tall man in the centre of it all talking to children about just their general interests. And normally Mr. Lowe was in the thick of the lines, just taking an interest in these children.
And as we got on in first year, second year, third year, we actually, I think we grew more into a school, because it was a very artificial situation at first, not having anybody but first year.
And right from the start I felt I felt very impressed by just the sheer friendliness of the staff. It was so easy to get on with everybody so quickly. I think it was something to do with the feeling that we were all in this new venture together, that we're starting something new, and we weren't inheriting other people's problems or other people's mistakes or other people's systems. We were just forging out something completely new, and I think that helped tremendously with the family atmosphere. The only thing maybe that went against the family atmosphere was that we had separate staff rooms, in the old-fashioned sense that although we were so few staff, there was a ladies' staff room and a men's staff room at opposite ends of the building. But apart from that, we certainly got on very well with each other, and there were many social events and so on.
Meanwhile, the building at Monifieth was nearing completion and ready to welcome eager staff and pupils. However, the first impressions of the new Monifieth High School were not entirely favourable.
I think the first thing we saw was some architect's drawings, and my memory of that was the plan that they were going to surround the building with trees. If you see the front of the special brochure that was produced even after the official opening, it has a diagram where the place is surrounded by trees. Well, only recently have we got 1 or 2 trees. It's taken 15 years or more to get some trees. We were also involved in some of the planning for it, and I do remember the funny incident about Mr. Andrew, who was the first principal teacher of PE, looking at the plans and discovering that there seemed to be only 1 set of changing rooms for the swimming pool. We thought we were maybe advanced in education in the 1970s, but unisex changing rooms aren't really the in thing yet.
Well, rather like a prison. It looked to me rather like a prison at the time. It was kind of detention centre with so few windows and lights having to be kept on all the time. Also, we just couldn't believe that after so many thousands of years of architecture and building schools in Britain, there were such problems so quickly when it rained, with leaks in the roof and water pouring in, for example, at the stage where the curtains went along, water pouring in there with buckets having to be put there to catch the water. It just seemed incredible that a brand new school should have this kind of problem when there are old schools all over Dundee that don't have these problems. It was just so difficult to believe.
First impression of the new school building was panic, because we came in here and a lot of the equipment that had been purchased was actually being housed in another school. And when we came here, quite a lot had still to be delivered, but overall it was bright, it was very well equipped. It was very big compared to Strawby. To get around it was quite difficult to begin with. But overall it was a very pleasant experience to move down here and just feel that you were in a place that you belonged.
But certainly when we came in and we had our first staff meeting, the memorable words from Mr. Lowe were, "Welcome to Alcatraz." And that has stuck with me, because the first impression of these sort of dark buildings, no windows on the outside, wasn't the most welcoming. And yet inside I've always thought it was very cheerful, with the red and yellow doors and the white corridors, and it's been well looked after over the years. It's still, I think, quite cheerful inside.
So much to criticise, and yet, well, who are we to complain with carpets on the floor and new furniture and so on? It's done us well.
So with staff and pupils safely installed in the new building, Monifieth High began to grow with a full complement of 6 year groups being achieved in August 1981.
Today the school is a well-established feature of the community, accommodating children from Barnhill, Broughty Ferry, Monifieth and some of the smaller neighbouring villages. Currently, more than 850 children benefit from the wide range of subjects on offer in the school.
What's getting to all the sandwiches?
Chopped tomato bananas.
We don't need this. Why have you got that? It's getting Halloween. It's literally Halloween. Go, go, go!
He's all watching. So it's the first man, comes running out, shouts deck, runs in front, acts as defender, bang, comes in, rips, pops. All he's going to do is deck, and the same thing goes over again. So in your groups of 4 or 5,
Did this last week.
Come on, look at the space, look at the spread. That's the big leader, that's good. Try and shoot.
What? Have you done an 8? Yeah, there is, there. Honestly, how do you do curves? Just kind of curve. Well done, Richard.
disastrous.
Cheese cone.
You want a board?
all the way down here. Put your part away from the line. Okay. Go. Now, you get it there. Put your part over there. Drop it down there.
Academic success has always been one of Monifieth's greatest strengths, with many pupils leaving school having achieved above average results. For the most successful in each year, the memory of prize giving is one which will remain with them for a very long time.
I'm delighted to say that Alison McCulloch can be here to receive the prestigious Guts and Armister Prize.
Monifieth pupils have never been denied the opportunity of broadening the mind through travel, with many field trips to places such as New Lanark and the Royal Highland Show on offer. Trips abroad have also proved very popular with many pupils.
One of the highlights of the second year pupils is the annual trip to Holland. Since the early days, the school has built up a strong reputation for concerts and shows.
There were the early school shows, which paled into insignificance in comparison to the very professional shows that are put on by people like Mrs. Bertie and Mr. Robertson, and that have been put on more recently here.
If I can just say, I mean, way back the very first school show, where virtually the whole school took part in it. Miss Clark, the original music teacher, she conducted it, and Miss Russell, who has recently retired, she was the orchestra. She played the piano, in fact. And, we did excerpts from Oliver, and even in those days, we were trying to set standards for the future.
Jean Russell, who played piano when she would assist Evelyn Clark with concerts. David Eason, who I took a lead in one production. I myself was involved in making costumes and putting on makeup for displays, and we really all pulled together very well as a staff.
My dear teacher and little friends, truly it is nice to have you here.
Ja, to have you here is nice.
We've been in a world, such a wondrous world. We've been wanting for you once night. But the scratching of nails, but the biting of hair. We've been turning all the bedrooms inside out. But now you're here.
Take that, Scarecrow! Don't you dare throw that at the Scarecrow! Atta girl, Dorothy!
Hey, you saved us, Dorothy.
Oh, you saved me, you mean? Hey, she's getting away!
Hey, look how small she is.
Don't let her get away, it's magic water! Oh, no, you don't, witchy! That does it! Oh, no, look, she's getting out again! Look at her shrink! That must be the same stuff my laundry uses. Get down! Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, old witch, the wicked witch. Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. Wake up, you sleepy head. Rub your eyes, get out of bed. Wake up, the wicked witch is dead. She's gone where the goblins go below, below, below your hole. Just open up and sing, and ring the bells that ding dong, you merry old. Sing it high, sing it low, let them know the wicked witch is dead.
At least two former peoples, memories of school shows have a particular significance and have influenced careers which have brought them into the public eye.
I remember the principal teacher of music very well, for various reasons, which I shall leave Mr. Lowe to try and remember these for himself as to why I should remember the principal teacher of music. I also remember Anne Kippen very well because of the foolish decision, I think it would be fair to say, that she made when I was in 4th year to get involved in this crazy idea that I had, along with some of my friends, to put on a pantomime. And she said, oh yes, I'll get interested in that. And there was also one of the modern languages teachers, Norman Mackenzie. Yes, there was one situation which, it was a terribly sad situation. Again, it involves the principal teacher of music who actually managed to slip and fall in front of a group of senior boys when she was rehearsing them for trial by jury, and showed us things that no teacher should ever show a batch of pupils. And I also remember one other member of staff in particular who was trying to control the situation but had tears running off the end of her chin because the whole situation was just so unexpected, and that stands out. I also remember a situation where I was rehearsing for a school concert, and one day out with school, and this is absolutely true, an upright piano fell over onto my foot, which is another experience that I won't forget, but it did involve me not being able to play in the concert because I had to keep my foot up for quite some time, and I think there was a lot of mickey taking about the staff saying Richard Allen was so desperate to get out of that particular concert they threw a piano on his foot, so that's something else that I remember, yeah.
I suppose walking back into the building I remember just about everything about it, but especially the school plays, definitely the school plays. Colin Robertson, Keith Reid, my co-stars in all these, or I was their co-star in all these productions. Oh, I do remember Mrs. Golan. I don't know if Mrs. Golan's still about, but in my day anyway, she was, I don't know what you'd call her. She used to wear a white coat anyway, and give you disprin if you needed one. And she was a fairy in one of the productions we did, and it was hilarious. I'm surprised Colin doesn't. Where's the photo of that, Colin? Because that is a classic. She had the big lipstick and the eyeshadow on, and a wee sparkly wand and crown and a wee tutu thing. And that was great. And Keith Reid as Prince Charming, as I was Snow White. And he came on strutting his stuff like he always used to do. Sorry, Keith. With his Walkman and stuff. And of course Colin being in every single production. I suppose my biggest memory was we used to have a assistant director, I think it was, Gavin, oh what's his face? Gavin, whichever your name is.
Smith.
Thank you. We went to Craigie High anyway after that, my dad's school. And when I'd said I wanted to go to drama school, he called me into his office because I used to be brainy at school, and he said it was a complete waste of time being an actress and it was just like a little boy's dream of being a footballer, and that I should be a primary school teacher and all the rest of it. But I was really determined to do this, and I did my audition for drama school, got in, and he sort of went, well, we'll see how it goes. And then when I started working in the business, he went, maybe you were right. So I suppose that's kind of what I remember most about choice of career.
I remember being glad of getting out of Stobswell, I have to admit, because I dare say that anybody who was involved with the bus journeys from Monifieth up to Stobswell, you know, twice a day up and down on that bus, it wasn't a lot of fun, and there was a lot of hassle sometimes on the buses. It was just another way of getting into trouble, I suppose, when these buses were available to you. I didn't like the journey, I didn't like having to get up that bit early in the morning. Mind you, it did have its advantages, you know, sometimes the buses couldn't make it on the icy roads, and, you know, we just had to be left in Monifieth. But I was quite glad when the new school opened. I have various memories of buckets in classrooms to catch all the various bits of water that was dripping through the roof, and having to be careful walking down corridors because of slippy corridor floors because of water getting in.
I remember coming to a very, very new building, and everything was red and yellow, and I'm pleased to see it's still red and yellow. And nice desks and chairs, as opposed to sort of that prison that we were in before. And we've got a swimming pool here, and just better facilities, really. School trip to Holland, and I think we were in 3rd year, can't remember. That was a good laugh anyway, first time I got drunk. Got into trouble from Tony Sellers. And I suppose more the social side of school I remembered.
Well, I think they're mostly quite favourable as far as memories of school go. Now, I have to say I really enjoyed my years at Monifieth High. They had their interesting moments, but I think on the whole I've got to say I enjoyed the 6 years, he said loudly, that I spent there.
I enjoyed my time at Monifieth High anyway.
Thank you.
Honest.
Participating in sporting events has also given some pupils the chance to excel, and the school has achieved many successes on the sporting front.
Another annual highlight is Sports Day, which is popular with participants and spectators alike.
Hector Lowe has imposed his personality on the school's development right from the beginning, earning him the respect of both staff and pupils.
He's not the kind of person who shows one side of him when he's trying to impress and a different side of him later. He's the kind of person who is just utterly himself right from the start, and I remember him as being very friendly, having a really human touch, being interested in background, interested in family and that sort of thing, as well as interested in the academic side of things and the professional side of things.
But I went across to see him and talk about certain things, and he welcomed me into the room and he sat down and he gave a big yawn, something which I have learned to do, I think, since. But he said, "Oh, I do apologise for that, but I've just spent the morning in the haunted house." And I looked a bit puzzled, and he said, "I've just been at Seymour Lodge. Don't you think that looks like the haunted house?" Now, Seymour Lodge is where all the advisors were in those days, and clearly he'd been involved in planning for the new school, and I imagine it was a fairly tiring business. But I thought it was a good description, because Seymour Lodge does look like the haunted house, even now, although it's not used by education anymore. So I knew when I met him, you know, that was, well, he was a character that I was going to have to get used to dealing with.
I remember meeting a very tall, imposing man who was very quietly spoken and had traditional attitudes to school, which I really quite liked. The first staff meeting that he chaired, I found that he had a rather dry sense of humour, which appealed to most of the staff there at the time. I really found him quite interesting and sensible in his approach.
I remember his welcoming speech. That was up in Stobswell in the old school, which is now part of the college, of course. I think it was short and sweet and to the point, which basically said, "Good morning, welcome to Monifieth High. If you obey the rules of the schools, your days here will be happy, and if you don't, they won't." And then he walked off the stage. I don't think I'll ever forget that, because at that time I was 12 years old, and you know, I was in this new situation, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it very much. And I think I got the impression I wasn't going to like it with that welcoming speech. But as I said, things changed considerably. So that's one memory I have of him. I also remember him seemed to enjoy the pantos, so I was happy.
My only memories about him really, I used to walk about going, he used to always have his eyes closed like that and smile. And he used to, it was strange because he used to wear his belt underneath his jacket. And when he was teaching us, he always used to do this stretch thing. It used to fascinate me how his belt used to stay on over his arm like that. I always expected to fall off. And it must have been clipped to his braces, because he wore braces too. I thought that was quite cute, because it reminded me of my grandpa at the time. So.
Press coverage of events at the school is not infrequent, and with the imminent reorganisation of district boundaries, it seems that uncertain times lie ahead for the staff and pupils of Monifieth High. The one thing which is certain is that life without Hector Lowe is sure to be very different.
I think his control of the place and his influence on the place will haunt these corridors for many years to come, and I'm glad of it.